afternoon. Today we're going to do our presentation on forestry and wildlife protection program by Sparrow Stone.
Hi, I'm Sparrow Stone. I'm presenting about our wildlife and forestry in Nashville. Each year, over 50,000 trees are cut down for new developments in Nashville, and our beloved wildlife in Tennessee relies on tree cover and natural area for habitat, food, shelter. And Davidson County alone is home to almost 70 unique rare species as classified by the Tennessee government, which means that they're in danger of no longer being native to Nashville, losing their habitat here. One that's more popularly known is the Nashville crayfish, which is only indigenous to Davidson County, which is federally endangered. And so one tree alone provides a habitat for upwards of 2,300 different organisms. 80% of amphibians, 75% of birds, and 65% of mammals live in or on a tree. Science shows that reduced biodiversity promotes the emergence and spread of serious illnesses such as Lyme disease and West Nile virus, mainly due to our wildlife populations being out of balance, our trees, our plants, our flora, and our fauna. When they get out of balance, we get more diseases that come for us humans, our pets, everything. And here in the United States, more than 3,000 communities rely on drinking water from watersheds in national parks and forests. And Nashville's water specifically comes from the Middle Cumberland watershed, which is the smallest of 14 watersheds in the Cumberland region and is the home to our Nashville crayfish. I have this graphic, which I thought was very helpful. We are the second most forested city in the United States, with over 23 million trees. And the runner-up only has 8 million, which is incredibly impressive, and it's essential to preserve this.
And one of the benefits of being one of the cities within the U.S. that has one of the largest population of trees is the protection against straight-line winds. So as we've all experienced recently, winter storms, extreme thunderstorms pose a danger, and having larger tree cover like this can help break up these straight line winds and prevent higher wind speeds and higher damages. So it is important that we retain this standing so that we can have a safer city.
With that being said, my proposal is to add a new section to Chapter 17.24 of Title 17 on zoning. This section will be entitled Wildlife and Tree Cover, and the section will require all new developments to select one of 3 requirements. Requirement 1 being preserving at least 40% of the existing canopy trees. So this one will be counted by individual trees. Requirement 2, devoting at least 25% of the land on the property to forests or tree canopy, so by square meters or acreage. And requirement 3 would mean participating in an easement program, creating a wildlife corridor on one edge of the property in compliance with the standard wildlife corridor, which is something that I created and we'll show you in a moment. This is an example of the first requirement, showing that it's counted by individual trees. So in a pre-development property, you would have, say, 9 trees, and in the post-development property, you would retain 40% of the trees, which would be, in this case, 4 canopy trees. This 40% must be made up of existing trees, not newly planted trees. But there's an exception to that made for damaged or fallen trees. Damaged or fallen trees must be replaced with one tree at least 50% caliper of the original tree, or at least 3 native understory trees. The requirement 2 standard is based on physical space or acreage. The first Example of a pre-development property being 100% forest and being reduced to only 25% forest in the post-development property. This 25% must be made up of pre-existing forest and must not be modified or disturbed. And then finally, the easement program, or requirement number 3. This graphic that I have here is from chapter 17.24 for visual buffer yards. And I would like to combine D1 and D3 standards to create the standard wildlife corridor. The standard wildlife corridor will be at least 50 inches wide, or 50 feet wide, and the requirements will be repeated per 100 feet of length. And this would require that the that the wildlife corridor contains at least 17 canopy trees, 8 understory trees, and 50 shrubs. And now on this one, it doesn't have my updated thing, but I said that this would be compliant with the pre-existing standard 17.24.030 on plant standards. And so overall, the goal of this program is to protect and preserve Nashville's wildlife and forests, improve biodiversity throughout our city, increase forest cover through the use of zoning requirements and easements, maintain the rare species population, which is what I referenced before, connect wildlife habitats through wildlife corridors, and preserve Nashville's trees and tree canopy cover, and retain our status as the second most forested city in the United States. And those are my sources, and that's the end. And now I'll take questions.
Councilmember Suarez.
Councilmember Benedict, actually, sitting at Suarez's desk, the #1 chair. What a great presentation, and this one is near and dear to me for a number of reasons. One, I'm very familiar with development, and 2, I love trees, and the district that I represent in Inglewood is very much tree covered, and so we also have a lot of damage from storms. So, but it's being developed, especially along the Gallant Lake corridor and just off of it. I'm curious on a couple of fronts. On for the corridor that you mentioned, for the 3 options, what was the average lot size that applied to? Do you know if that was like a ½ acre?
I'm not entirely sure. I took the graphic for the wildlife corridors that from the already existing standard on creating buffer yards, so creating a visual buffer between unsightly objects or on scenic roads, arterial roads.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what it was in acreage. It only referenced it in like repeating every 50 by 100 feet, which is why.
And that tells us the measurement, but I don't know the math off the top of my head, but that's also why we have a planning department.
Yeah.
To look at those things and to answer that question. I just didn't know if you knew, because it's a lot of trees.
Yeah.
I think one of the arguments that people have on the developer side of things is we do have such a large tree canopy. Big whoop if we lose some of it. I think big whoop really is a big whoop.
Yeah.
But if the argument is we're not really having that much of an impact, so and a lot of the trees that are being cut down are hackberries or other trees. I think that that's one thing to look out for, and that as a body and with the planning commission, also to getting their recommendation, would be making sure that they're taking that into consideration, so that on the floor here we would be able to argue against that, much like you did today.
Yeah.
I had one other question, Councilwoman Suara, but you know me, I get on the microphone and forget them all.
All right, I can call someone else and we'll come back to you about that.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Guy, I see you sitting. I see that.
All right, thank you so much, Madam Suara, and thank you to all of you for this presentation. This is incredibly wonderful, also gives us solutions. I think there's some great questions, like my colleague was asking. I also want to know if you can dive in a little bit more on the easement piece of that. Is I think you had three possibilities for the protections, and I don't know if they were either or if they were all required. But if you could walk through a little bit more of that, that'd be really great. And thank you all so much. This is incredibly important.
Yes, of course. So it was an either or thing. I don't think I fully read it off, but okay, just go back to this one. I said that the new developers will be required to select one of the three, one that best fits their development. So between the three, I specifically chose different options because I know it can be hard to just give one set requirement. You have to do this on your property. But I felt like for some different kinds of development, some may require more spread out and separated areas of forest or tree canopy, which is why I implemented this one, which is counting by actual physical trees on the property, and they don't have to all be together. They could be separated around the property. You just have to retain that 40% of the original. And then, remind me of the second part of your question?
About the easement.
The
Talk just
easement.
a little bit about
So,
the easement for 1 second.
only this one would be following the easement, and it would it would just be an agreement to implement this wildlife corridor at one edge of the property. I wanted to give, this is my main idea in the sense that I wanted to give other options, so you don't have to agree with this because the easements will be optional, but agreeing to it means maintaining and just preserving, not touching this place, but implementing it. Putting in this native wildlife corridor that creates the required amount of space, which is 50 feet is the required amount, or the minimum space width for a wildlife corridor to be effective. But creating this proper piece on their property just for them to maintain, but not build anything on it.
Councilmember Droffel.
Yeah, thanks, Council Lady. And first, let me acknowledge the great job on doing this. I was here last year, and thank you for all your hard work on doing this. It's much appreciated. You got some great people, so thank you. Just a question, what's the source information for all the tree details or demographics that you have? Where did you get most of that information? It's great information and great stuff on the wildlife. I'm just curious where it came from.
Did you say specifically the wildlife?
The number of trees in the tree canopy, et cetera, stuff.
Okay, the number of tree canopy, the number of trees for the total of Nashville comes from Nashville.gov. That specific graphic was created on by a website that specializes in maintaining forest canopy in cities, but it sources its information from Nashville.gov, so that the tree count itself and the acreage also referenced in that infographic is on Nashville.gov. And then for my tree types and tree standards, I guess that all comes from the ordinances stated in chapter 17-24, which is on landscaping, buffers, and trees.
Good enough. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Is this better? Yes. Okay, we're back in business. Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful presentation. A question I wanted you all to think about, or I was wondering, so sometimes in Nashville, all of our parcels are not perfectly shaped. You have a lot of odd shaped parcels, and you'll have people who will then try to go to the BZA for an exception. So I was really curious if y'all thought kind of like next step, because oftentimes I deal with this. People will have these requirements, but then there is a hardship where there's something going on, and then they go to the BZA to get an exception. They don't have to do it. And I just recently had one where they had to just do less of the landscape buffering. So I was just wondering, whenever y'all are thinking through this, what would be next steps if people were trying to go and circumvent this process due to hardships of their size of their parcel?
That's an interesting thing to think about. The main reason that I wanted to give 3 options is to allow for that variation in land property sizing and shapes and all of the different, some developments are going to require you to have not just a linear block of thing like the wildlife corridor that I was the main thing that I wanted to implement, but I think that it will be equally as helpful to have even just like retaining the 40% of canopy trees, because those trees can be anywhere on the property. And although I think through hardship, like there should be exceptions, I believe that most properties can be encompassed within these, and that was my idea with creating more than one.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you had options. I think that just with all the things that we deal with in rezoning, that's just like a next step. So appreciate y'all's hard work. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
And colleagues, the idea for youth in local government is two. One is to get to know you guys and to meet you, but the other is for them to also bring ideas to us. We are the next step. What I ask them to do is to identify the issues and bring recommended solutions to us. And then, as some of you may remember, from the first year, we've been taking their ideas and taking it to the next step. So I'll be calling on some of you and all of you that says this is something I'm interested in to help lead the next step for this one. And then when it comes to transportation, we already identify some people that wants to work on that. That will be the next step. We are the next step. And so these ideas, we need to work on it with them, with whoever we need in planning to make sure that we get to the next step. So don't worry, guys. That's why you're here. We'll help you take you to the next step. All right. Thank you guys for the lovely presentation. And now we have white plate.